You're good. All right, guys, I've got a special edition Sensei Chat today. We have a ton of news and information to go over, and who better to have on this journey with us than Jack Hartley? I've had him in previous streams, and his expertise in the crypto industry is just incredible, and I'm very fortunate to have some of his time today. And Jack, for the people that maybe don't know you, you want to give maybe a 30, 60-second overview of who you are before we kind of get started in all of this information.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're too kind, Sensei. Thank you for the intro. So my name's Jack Hartley. I'm Chief Launch Officer at Luna Digital Assets. I'm also leading business development over at StratEx, which is a DeFi vaults platform. Luna Digital Assets is one of the premier venture studios in the space. We incubate some of the largest projects in the industry, from Polygon to QuickSwap and many other interesting DeFi projects. Really happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And I mean, that's the reason I like having you here, Jack, because you are connected into the industry bigger than most people. And if anyone is kind of seeing what is happening behind the scenes, and of course, what you're building in particularly, it's good to have that direct knowledge for the audience. So I'm really, really thankful to have you and everything that you do for the industry.
Thank you. Yeah, it certainly gives me some the inside track sometimes on some of the way institutional folks and some of the biggest builders in the space are thinking. And I'm very grateful to be able to tap some of the smartest folks in the industry for those insights. So,
all right. Well, first thing I want to tackle here, if we can, is what is kind of happening around regulation. I know you are overseas, but I imagine that you are following kind of what's happening currently with regulation clarity here in the United States. I want to play this clip and then get a little bit of feedback on kind of where you think we are and kind of what needs to happen. And so who's on the screen here is this is the Treasurer of the United States, Scott Bessent, and he's kind of talking about where we are right now with regulation. This was just on Sunday on the Sunday shows on Fox. Let me play it.
Quick on this crypto legislation that seems to be hung up in the Senate. Secretary, do you expect that the Clarity Act will in fact come back for a markup? And why are we having a debate about bank margins? Where do you stand on this? Do you think crypto platforms should be able to pay rewards, pay customers for moving stablecoin or money out of traditional bank deposit accounts and keep them on crypto platforms? Where are you on that issue?
Again, Maria, I think what we're seeing in the crypto market over the past few months means more than ever that the U.S. we need market structure, we need clarity, and we need to get this across the line this spring. We got a few recalcitrant actors who said, well, it'd be better to have no legislation than the legislation we don't want. And I think both on the banks, the other crypto firms are united against them. So we need to get this across the line. The U.S. Under President Trump's leadership, the U.S. is becoming the crypto capital of the world with our best practices, best regulation, and for crypto to remain a viable digital asset and move forward, we need to get this Clarity Act done.
So you think it'll come back fairly soon then?
I'm optimistic, and there's bipartisan support here.
All right, Jack, taking a look at kind of where we are right now with the crypto industry, do you see clarity getting done? I mean, are you having conversations behind the scenes with projects? Are they worried about this stuff? Are you worried about this stuff?
So I think it's worth separating a few things first. I think just first impressions on the Clarity Act is I think that with these things, with contentious legislation, there's always some arguing back and forth and last minute changes. I think ultimately it will probably pass in the near future here. And I think, the key's in the name, right? Markets respond often to predictability more than they do to, getting everything that they want, essentially. So the problem we've got at the moment is there's a massive amount of institutional capital that wants to come on chain and wants to interact with this space and wants to build things and expose their own clients to this space and some of the products that exist here. But there's no set in stone regulatory framework from which they can interact with it. And if you think about the way that these the institutions that have been around in the United States and in Europe and other places for, in some cases, going back more than 100 years, their reputations are focused around long-term risk management And so they're more likely to be hesitant with new products until they get regulatory clarity, so that they don't risk the reputation of the broader institution, even if there's a large amount of demand from their clients and investors, because they're playing a game that lasts decades, or in some cases hundreds of years, rather than thinking short term. Now, what I can tell you is that there's a huge amount of demand, specifically for RWA projects coming on chain, from both sides. So from the supply side, there's a lot of institutions that are interested in bringing RWAs on chain, and from the demand side, from the chains that want to foster this innovation, and from the clients that actually want to purchase these RWA projects on chain, there's a dual coincidence of want, is one way of putting it, which is great. That's like the perfect environment to build anything in. So I think as soon as we get this market structure act done, then we can focus on building cool stuff, and that's the thing that matters.
Do you see, I mean, right now, I see a huge demand about talking about tokenization of real world assets. Do you probably think that's where people need to be focused right now in the crypto market? Because we can get so lost with prediction markets, and some people chase meme coins and all these other things, but it seems like the institutional focus right now is on real world assets.
Yeah. It's not their only focus, so I don't want to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But I think there's a massive amount of institutional demand for RWAs and RWA focused products. The reason for that is essentially threefold. So you have a situation where there's a ton of yield on chain in various different areas, but there's not a ton of real yield on chain, and the reason for that is there's not a ton of fee capture within DeFi. It usually goes to a few main platforms. So like an example of this is Aave has incredible fee capture. They make good money. They pass that yield onto their stakers. There's naturally occurring yield on the platform from the markets they have for lending and borrowing there. That makes total sense. But there's there's thousands of lending and borrowing platforms on multiple chains throughout the industry that don't make enough fees, but they still provide yield, and they provide it for inflationary tokenomic models. So there's a lot of yield, but there's not a lot of real yield. There is real yield that exists from tokenized treasuries on chain. There is some real yield that exists in the form of tokenized real estate and RWA projects with mixed success, some of them very successful, some of them less so. And I think the point of the current drive towards RWAs is you've got a huge appetite for yield, billions of dollars chasing yield. So how do we provide that in a way that's secure, in a way that's going to sustain for the long term, in a way that's either based on fee capture that can be redistributed, or through real yield from the TradFi world? So from yield from apartment buildings, yield from structured products from the investment bank world, or whatever it might be. And that's where you really get to separate the yield that has existed in DeFi for a long time, which is inflationary yield essentially, and you separate out the products that provide real yield. And that's also where you get into more robust user protections long term. So if you have a platform that provides real yield, that isn't going to be aggressively devalued over the short and sometimes medium term in a way that the inflationary yields that powered DeFi summer, for example, were. And if you think about the way that most people invest, so I'm not talking about your degens here or your crypto native folks. I'm talking about, average person that wants to put money into a pension fund. They want to invest over the long term. They want to maybe hold a basket of yield stocks, a basket of tech stocks, and a few other things in indices and so on. Very simple products that provide a return over, a multi-decade timeline. Within that, there's not much room for inflationary yield, because if you introduce even a little bit, it can eat into principal really quickly. Whereas if you provide them with a more stable product that's RWA focused, it'll make people a lot more excited about DeFi again, because they can access these assets in a democratized, decentralized manner, and not have to worry so much about the yield disappearing after 6 months or 12 months.
No, that's a great point, man. I think there's a lot of value in what you said. And I think if people are kind of still trying to figure out, what's been holding back institutional, it feels like it's there on the sidelines, it's coming. I think the Clarity Act will kind of push it over the edge, and then we can really see what kind of these assets really can do.
just before you go into the next clip, I just want to impress upon everybody, like, and I know that this cycle perhaps has been a little disappointing for some people, but the word I would use is avalanche. I think there's an avalanche of capital that is sat on the sidelines waiting for things like market structure legislation. And as soon as you have that, you can price risk appropriately. You can interact with these companies and these assets in a way that's compliant. And then you'll see the large institutions probably deploy fairly aggressively on chain.
It feels like retail can only push the market up so much, and you need the institutional flows to come in order to get anywhere. And I was listening to, I went through an article by the CIO of Bitwise, I think is Matt Hogan or whatever. And he says that he believes that we've been in a crypto winter since January of 2025, and that the digital asset treasury companies and the the ETFs and the other products were pushing Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana up, while the rest of the market kind of didn't do much. And so I actually researched this, and I let me share some of this with you, because it's pretty astounding numbers. Just to get into this really quickly to give people some additional context. Oh, and if you're just now joining us, guys, if you could like the stream, and then if you're on X, if you want to share it out, or if you want to share out the YouTube link, I would greatly appreciate that. But take a look at this, man. In 2021, there was just about 10 DAT companies. 2022, 15, 23, 25. In 2024, there were 70. Then September 2025, there were 200 plus DAT companies holding over 1 million Bitcoin. And these companies brought in $464 billion. That's how much.
And that's just Bitcoin. It might surprise some of your listeners to learn that there's DATs that accumulate other assets.
Yeah.
Some of them fairly aggressively. And we've seen this in the venture space through my work at Luna. This shift from venture funding flowing not only into startup projects within the DeFi space, but specifically into DATs. If you go to some of the more niche industry events that are focused around, Web3 builders and investors out in places like Singapore and so on, some of the side events there that are where these two would usually meet. I'm thinking specifically of one that I went to just a few months ago that was dominated by DATs. So you would have usually 10 projects that might be pitching new ideas and new products, and then you'd have some investors there that they could network with. Let's say 80% of those this time were DATs in some form or another.
Wow.
So it's a very different vehicle to what how the altcoin space usually functions. So I think that's worth remembering, and how much of that capital would have flowed into altcoin teams that would have eventually deployed that into the marketplace through some kind of IDO mechanism where they launch a token on chain and then build a community that way. Whereas DATs don't really do much of that. Yeah. So DATs are usually traditional finance vehicles. They usually take look. There's some really innovative ones. So there's some one I was speaking to recently, and I won't name it, but they wanted to do a kind of a scheme where they were going to use some of the profits from the DAT to buy distressed assets, and then they were going to use that as a kind of flywheel to buy more of the asset that they wanted to accumulate. So there's some innovative spins on this. It's not all just buy and hold, but I would say that's massively affected the pipeline of new altcoin and DeFi projects, is that kind of diversion away from the way that these things would traditionally get funded.
Yeah, and I just want to share this with people if they don't know kind of how a digital asset treasury usually works. The company stock trades at a premium to its Bitcoin NAV, which is the net asset value. They issue new shares or convertible debt at the premium, and then they use the proceeds to buy more Bitcoin, increasing the BTC per share price. And the stock rises further, allowing more issuance, creating a reflexive loop. Do you think the model is going to hold though, Jack? I mean, I'd imagine there's going to be some DAT companies that are extremely successful, while most other ones probably will fall flat, just like any industry when you're getting new products being built. Are these going to transform in some way, or do you see the same model kind of holding true for the next few years?
Yeah, so I think you're right in what you're saying. There will be a shift. I think some of these DATs, from what I've seen, are going a little bit towards the aggressive side, using different types of share offerings to get a little more leverage, taking on debt and so on. So I think that side of things probably needs to be, and also not just that, but the assets that they're accumulating. You know, on the very, very high end, you've got like the sound money DATs that are focused on Bitcoin or Litecoin. I think, you know, some of those and some of the accumulating the larger altcoins, I think that makes sense. But some of these DATs in the last year, towards the end of 2025, we're talking about accumulating smaller altcoins or baskets of altcoins.
Yeah.
And I think this is where these things can come unstuck a little bit. So what could have been a very sound thesis for MicroStrategy, you know, with its convertible notes, where they have they're accumulating an asset that has a finite supply with a very, very liquid market that has a clear product market fit in Bitcoin. The further you get away from that, I think, you know, the more issues start to arise. If you for example, I listened to a pitch event, it was last year towards the end of 2024, where they wanted to do a DAT, but instead of accumulating Bitcoin, they would accumulate leveraged MicroStrategy. So it's like, right, exactly. So this is like the type of derivative products where you can see how things could come unstuck.
Yeah.
And my thesis on this is just, if you are a digital asset treasury company, keep it simple, keep it low leverage, easily defensible, nothing that you have to convince people of for too long. The thesis, I mean, you can produce various vehicles to accumulate, but the general thesis should be pretty simple and easy to explain. If you're having to justify why you're taking on triple leverage and you're accumulating stuff, you know, 10 layers deep, maybe it's a little too risky.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give people a little bit more understanding before we move on here, in the crypto market last year, you saw $130 billion basically come in here, 68 billion through DATs, 31.8 million for spot Bitcoin and Ethereum and Sol products, and then other products, 30 billion for a total of $130 billion. So I think that's where you saw like the Bitcoin, Ethereums, the Solanas, the XRPs doing really well, while the rest of the market kind of suffered because you didn't really have that institutional ability to come in through their brokerage accounts.
Yeah, and I would also say, I also think some of these will end up being wildly successful. I think this is an experimental phase that the market went through from, you know, I guess starting with MicroStrategy many years ago. But the expansion in DATs really, I guess, picked up 2023, 2024, and probably peaked last year with DATs for all different kinds of offerings and different kinds of vehicles. And then there'll probably be a contraction now, because I imagine if you invested in a high leverage DAT towards the end of last year, and you've seen the market, you know, decrease by, I guess, 30 or 40% in some cases, then you're probably a little bit concerned about return on investment.
Yeah.
So that'll cause a natural deleveraging. However, I think long term, the DATs that focus on sound money, on assets that are non-inflationary, on assets that have been around a long time. You know, people talk about the Lindy effect, which is the longer something exists, the longer it is likely to continue to exist. And I think if you focus on those Lindy effect coins, and you play things fairly conservatively, I think that there's a good chance that it'll succeed long term. And I think it doesn't just have to be Bitcoin. Like I mentioned, there's some innovative companies that are doing similar things for Litecoin. But I think there's a short list of assets that I would put in the DAT acceptable category. And unfortunately for everybody, there's been a long list of DATs, so that doesn't quite match up yet. But I think it will do in the next year.
I mean, you're seeing some DAT companies now evolve in the XRP space with Evernorth, you know, having, you know, 1 billion worth of assets to put to work. And there are other companies that said that they're going to follow through with some their own investment, but you know, I still have yet to see some of the other ones that were announced to actually make the investment to do so.
I would also say, you know, if you are a DAT company out there, I would also think about the broader investment thesis that you have as well. So on the one hand, you want to buy and hold the main thing, but I would consider having a small allocation, perhaps, you know, 1 to 5% of the portfolio, invest into ecosystem adjacent things that enhance the original thing. So like, take XRP as an example, or Litecoin or MicroStrategy. If you invest in companies that directly benefit the main thing, it makes it more likely that your thesis will succeed long term because you'll increase adoption and the velocity of usage on the thing that you want to make the DApp for. So sacrificing 1 to 5% upfront on investment in some side bets would probably pay dividends over a longer term horizon if enough similar dApps in your category catch on to the same idea. So I think MicroStrategy did a great job. They went all in on the one thing. It's Bitcoin only. And in doing so, they inspired a whole generation of other people to do similar things. But for the dApps that are trying to differentiate themselves now and attract attention, I would say if you pick an asset that you believe in and then allocate a small amount of the investment capital to things that support that thing, and then hopefully, over the long term, that'll make it more likely that your original thesis succeeds.
Fair enough, man. I did want to move on to this clip here. This is my favorite clip of the week. I don't know if you've seen this, but this is Hunter Horsley from Bitwise, and this is probably the most bullish 54 seconds I've heard. So let me play it for you.
There's a very large bank in America that had us do an education session just a month or two ago for some of their wealth managers in New York City. We had an executive there who's been there for 25 years speak. He said in the last 2 months, the executive team at the bank has gone from 0 to 500 miles an hour on crypto. Banks don't go from 0 to 500 miles an hour on anything. I've spoken with a number of CEOs and presidents and a few chairmen of banks. It's all happening right now. 2/3 of all financial institutions will be in crypto in the next 6 months. I think that over half of all fintechs and neobanks will be in crypto. So I think that the whole thing is getting wired up, connected. And that's important for the space because I think regardless of the specifics of what people's aspirations are for crypto, I think the general aspiration is that it gets adopted as a mainstream store of value, a mainstream asset class, new set of rails, and that billions of people use it.
Man, it sure feels like every day we are getting that much closer to where we want to be with the crypto market and these new rails that banks are going to operate to move value.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I said it earlier, but there really is an avalanche that's waiting on the sidelines for this clarity to take shape within the crypto market. A lot of people don't understand, like, if you don't have regulation in a space that's highly compliant, it just bars the majority of institutions from accessing that space because they can't deal with anything that's non-compliant. And so, if you have banks that have, hundreds of billions of dollars, or in some cases trillions of dollars in assets under management, and they're just excluded from the industry. Well, if you fix the exclusion and you give them the opportunity to participate, like a good number of them are going to participate and some of them are going to go really hard. And I think, there's an element of first mover advantage here. I've said this on your show before, I think, but the majority of these banks will have already done experiments and funded startups to do exactly what they're going to do as soon as the Clarity Act passes. Yeah. And this is where it gets interesting, right? Because how much of this stuff has been set up in advance over the last 12, 24, 36 months, and all they're waiting for is the legislative switch to be flipped, and they know the rules they've got to play by, and then they pile in immediately. And the other thing is, we spoke about this previously as well, is the agentic economy is taking shape in front of our eyes. And, all of these agents will use digital assets in some form or another. Some very directly, have been tokenizable or monetizable via tokens, and some indirectly, just using, ETH and XRP and other things to transact value and move value from A to B.
You're talking about AI agents, right? Do you want to maybe give a little base? There's going to be people who have no idea kind of what you're talking about. So maybe just describe what agentic AI is and kind of, because I know you are I consider you an expert on this, but I don't know where
I'm not an expert. I'm a casual observer at best, but I'll do my best to
fair enough
to scaffold for listeners. So. Okay, so you have on the base layer, you have the big AI models that are released from all the frontier labs like ChatGPT and Anthropic and XAI and so on. So that's like your Grok and all those that people are using on the apps. And then one layer up from that is the agents. And so agents are, they're essentially a middleware between the user and the bot. And they do a bunch of interesting things. So users or listeners to this show may have seen some of the hype recently around Maltbook and the Maltese and that kind of like open claw ecosystem, because they were making a lot of noise on socials recently. A lot of people were using them. Essentially what this is it's usually a local script that you can run that stays on, probably your machine or a cloud hosted machine like a VM. And you can provide that with lots of context. You can do so because it's not this isn't information that you have to relay to ChatGPT or Anthropic or any of these companies. So it can stay on your device. You can give it access to various files. Some of them have skills that they can learn, which is like basically like a simple bit of code that you can easily add that gives the agent the access to, for example, to manage your calendar or other things. And essentially, the simplest way to describe it is the agent is the middle layer that can conduct tasks for a long period of time, call in usually via API feed, so call in the larger models when it needs extra processing power. So a typical way somebody might use an agent is they might give the agent access to their calendar and their emails, and they might say to the agent, okay, here's the rules. Every time somebody sends me an email request to book a meeting, go onto my calendar and book that meeting, whether I'm available or not, and you can reference my available times on the calendar so you know if it's a good time to book. Now, if you said that to ChatGPT today via the phone app on your phone, it wouldn't be able to comply with that request because it can't get access to your Gmail. It sometimes struggles with certain types of websites, and it can't carry on tasks for long periods of time. The difference with agents and the agentic stuff is that you can give it a task that lasts for hours or days, and you can give it access to your apps, or you can give it access to files of information on a local device, so that it can have access to that information over a long time horizon. So why this is really useful is it allows you to interact with the large models through a layer that you control. So you don't have to give your data away to the big AI companies. The agent will only ping them if it needs extra processing power, for a higher value task, rather than relying on them constantly. So it's interesting. People are doing all kinds of things with agents. Some of them very, very interesting things like it's a fast moving space, right? Somebody put up a social media account that's specifically for a social media platform called Maltbot that's specifically for these agents, where humans can only observe and the agents themselves can interact with each other in a kind of open source environment. Some people are using them to manage their workflow when it comes to computer coding based tasks, and some people are just using them for fun or to schedule things in a very light way. Why that's important for crypto specifically, to get back to the original point, is that it's impossible for these agents to have a formal form of identification and go into a branch of your local bank. They can't do that, but they can have access to a DeFi wallet, and they can interact value to buy goods and services on chain on your behalf. And so it's very clear to me that if the future is agentic, in the sense that everybody's going to be running these agents in some form or another within, say, 12 months or 24 months, then the future in terms of value transfer on the internet really is decentralized, because it's the only way that it can happen right now. It's not the only way that it can happen forever. There's some decentralized identity protocols that might give agents access to things like bank accounts in the future. But right now, it's the most obvious, least friction way that they can transact value. So I think that's the way it's going to go.
I've seen a lot of people talk about the future will be billions of agents doing everyday tasks and these things. And then, you hear, I even heard like Anthony Popliano talking about, AI agents on Bitcoin. And I was thinking, why would you launch AI agents on Bitcoin when you could do it on like Hedera, Solana, or the XRP Ledger? Like some of that doesn't make sense to me, but I'd imagine those networks that I kind of just mentioned would probably be the most realistic choice if you're having billions of agents doing, billion more transactions. And some of these transactions might be 5 cents, 10 cents, $1. You're going to need the blockchain infrastructure to be able to make all those payments.
Yeah, exactly right. The agents almost always, probably, unless they get explicit instructions otherwise, are going to optimize for speed and cost efficiency. because that's the way almost everything in computer science works. We always optimize for lowest cost and most efficient model. And so I imagine the agents, just as being a natural product of that, will follow the same rules. And so you'll have blockchains that are very, very quick and very cheap, and they'll probably be the favored transaction rails for agents. It doesn't mean that they won't use other assets.
Yeah.
So specifically, it might be the case that you say to your agent, Crypto Sensei, I'm an XRP maxi. That's all I want to transact in. Please only use XRP when transacting value on my behalf. And that's a rule that you could set. And your agent would only do that. Other people's agents, you might have a mixed strategy. You might say, look, I like ETH, I like XRP, I like Bitcoin and some other stuff. So feel free to use the most efficient version of that to transact value on my behalf. I was speaking to a startup recently that does agents of varying different degrees for crypto projects. They do everything from yield agents to trading agents that are specifically designed to make profit for their users. This is like nascent stuff. It's really early stage, but this is the direction that the industry is going in. And so when we talk about this intersection of institutional capital coming on chain, legislative clarity, and AI, it's very clear to me what the direction of travel is over the next 12 months. And I'd urge you users to consider that price signal sometimes is very wrong.
When you
look at the market, often risk is priced for various different reasons. It's not always correct, and sometimes, the famous example that people give throughout history is looking at Amazon retracing to like $5 a share after the .com crash. And, there's this clip of Jeff Bezos from around that time where he said, everything within his business, all the metrics that he could see from the inside of the business were going in the right direction, but the share price was going in the wrong direction repeatedly for a long period of time. And that can happen sometimes. And markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent as well. So I'm not saying that anybody should put any kind of leverage bet on this. The best strategy for me, and I think probably for many people, has always been, have a very clear picture of what you believe and very firm beliefs, and then invest along those lines rather than trying to chase narratives and chase price action. Try to invest in things that you believe have a genuine shot of changing the world. And if you do that, you'll stay aligned with your own ethics and also hopefully aligned with the market over the long term.
That was very powerful, what you just said. And I think it goes to a larger conversation of where people are in the crypto market right now. People are looking at this, we're in this 4-year cycle. We're going to have this bear market now for a few years. People are not thinking clearly about regulation about to be passed, all these banks coming in. And I think people might be kind of underpricing the value on some of these assets before that thing takes place. And so what you said just kind of made a lot of sense in my head there.
Yeah,
so.
I would just add though, not everything is going to be carried along in the institutional and the AI wave. So, when we're looking at things, certainly from a Luna point of view, and also from just a personal point of view, we try to look at things that are going to stand the test of time over multiple years, that have teams that are aligned for the long term. We look for teams that are missionaries over mercenaries, that are not looking for a quick exit, and on the venture studio side. And then on a personal basis, it's really important to remember, like all hype about the crypto industry aside, that you are essentially dealing with it might be a very specified type of business, but it is essentially a business. So does it have positive cash flow? Is it making good fee capture? Does it have a very innovative model that could capture a large portion of the market share? These are all like very basic fundamental questions that you ask when you're looking at investing in anything. And so, my general point of view with this is that the institutional wave is going to be massive, and there's going to be, in some cases, there'll be face melting returns for some people. But I also think a lot of projects will be left out of that. And it really depends on how seriously your team has taken things like legal compliance, adaptability to changing regulation, And so I would urge people to look at more long-term bets rather than focusing on very short-term, hype-focused, narrative-driven pump assets.
Yeah, and usually by the time you hear about the narrative, it's already pumped, right? And you're just chasing things that are probably going to be heading back down a few days later. So I think there's a lot of that. I wanted to ask you about this, man, because I feel this is quite a big deal here. Hugo Fillion from Flare says 1-click yield direct from the XRP Ledger is coming with Flare smart accounts and will be available through Zomin Wallet. Smart accounts make Flare's ecosystem directly accessible controllable from the XRP Ledger. We can only do this because Flare has built one of the most comprehensive decentralized data suites in the industry. And so I ask you, 1-click, most people when they're investing in yield and doing these things, you have to take your crypto out of your wallet and you have to go and you're putting it in places that maybe you need to do a little bit more research, and that's kind of where some of the risk comes. But being able to do it directly from your wallet and with 1 click, where does that open up the industry to, right? Is Flare now maybe in a different category than some the companies and people building on Flare maybe or be able to take advantage of this? Where do you think this puts us?
So obviously this is a huge net positive, right, for Flare and also for XRP in general. Like the fact that you have access to 1-click yield products is really useful. I think this type of 1-click in wallet environment mirrors the way that TradFi yield operates. So if you think about the way that you would go about getting yield within a TradFi context, you would have, let's say, a Fidelity account or or some other investment bank, and you would buy an index of yield bearing stocks, for example. That will be handled. All the complexity of the buying the individual stocks and everything will be abstracted away from you, and you would just essentially click 3 buttons and then get access to those yield stocks over a long time horizon. And it's a very good sign that the industry is converging on a similar model, because when we look at the current way you can access yield on chain, it's very complicated. There's even going back to DeFi summer, you had very, very simple things like single-sided staking, and then that kind of evolved into, providing liquidity on DEX to facilitate trades. Then you'd provide 2 assets as liquidity. Then some, smart folks started stacking lending and borrowing platforms and providing liquidity and a few other things to create a DeFi strategy. And some of the smartest folks then stacked 10 of those to make an aggregated strategy. And that's great if that's what you want to do, and if you want to do that as your full-time job, that's incredible and all power to you. But for the majority of people, what you want is a relatively diversified product that has good risk disclosures, that's very clear on where the assets are being deployed. It's very simple and intuitive to use. And in many cases, you want to do that from an app that you're already using. So if you're already on the wallet, you already have assets there, and you can just get yield in the wallet. That's almost the perfect solution. So I think it's very, very net positive for Flare. And, shout out to that team, because, Hugo said it best. They've got one of the most robust data environments on chain. They have decided to provide a lot of utility for one of the biggest cryptocurrencies out there, which is XRP, which is incredible. And they're one of those teams where they're very, very future focused. And they're constantly looking at, which way is the industry heading, and what are the killer products, and what are the products that are going to get the most product market fit, regardless of market conditions. These are a team that I can honestly say they're not chasing hype, they're not chasing narratives. They're building things that make sense. They're trying to simplify the user journey. They're trying to make people that access Flare have the best, smoothest opportunity possible, and all power to them for doing it.
Yeah, I've been talking more about Flare recently. I mean, especially with the airdrop ending. I mean, you have 36 months of, was it 670 million Flare being airdropped to people, and now that's ended. And so when you have all of this innovation and growth and these new partnerships coming to light, and now the airdrop is gone, I mean, this really is probably a great time to be paying attention to what Flare is doing.
Yeah, there's tons of innovation on Flare networks, from the on the more institutional side with products like Firelight, where there's an insurance aspect provided through XRP. There's obviously SparkDex, which is the main DeFi hub on the chain, which have just introduced V4 DEX, and also liquid state derivatives as well on top of what they've already got. So it's really interesting. They've really got the whole package there.
Yep.
And it's an interesting time to be on Flare. And this is, going back to my broader point about the market kind of mispricing some of this stuff. Not to speak about individual assets, but it's one of those things where, if you have a chain or you have teams that are constantly building through thick or thin markets that are looking at not just what narrative is popular at the moment, but what types of things are going to be genuinely useful over a longer time horizon. I think that's a really strong signal that things are probably going to be positive for the long term.
Yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they announce next. Were you paying attention to Davos and kind of the conversations that were happening there? I mean, one of the key things that was talked about was AI and blockchain, and I'd never seen as many conversations at Davos about blockchain. Any kind of takeaways? Were you watching any of the interviews? You got anything that you'd like to add about the World Economic Forum?
Yeah, it was certainly interesting. I guess it was kind of a mixed bag because a lot of the more internationalist community has been perplexed, let's say, for what's been happening in the US with the various things like tariffs and all the the US administration's approach to business recently. Don't necessarily want to get into that side of it, but I think there's an emerging trend that the previous few decades have been characterized by increasing globalization, and now it's almost coming full circle again, where we're getting into more what you describe as more kind of trading blocks, which is a little different to how the previous few decades have run. So there's that interesting concepts, and I think there was a lot of interesting discussions around that. And then, of course, AI and crypto, they were the really big ones. One of the more interesting debates I watched was Demis Hassabis from Google's DeepMind and the CEO of Anthropic as well, and they were talking about timelines for AGI and all the other things that they're working on, and the disagreement on when we're going to get to this fast takeoff moment ranged from we're in it right now or very very soon to a couple of years or 3 years. And they're incredibly compressed timelines, and I think this is really interesting because as these things take off and they continue to get traction, it pushes everything else, anything else that could be related to digital architecture faster. So we have the big story, I guess, in the AI space over the last few months has been around Claude Code, and how incredible Claude Code is at building various tools, even itself. As its chief engineer announced that they'd used Claude Code to write 100% of the code for Claude Code recently. So it not only builds itself, but also it increases massively the velocity at which competent engineers can do software architecture. So suddenly, your best dev, instead of outputting 1,000 lines within a given time frame, he can now output 10,000 or 100,000 lines of the same quality. Which means that, guys that you thought were deploying stuff on both on chain and also in the TradFi environment or in the scientific arena, you thought they were building things very quickly over the last few years. Well, you haven't seen anything yet because the speed at which this is going to take off is just unbelievable. I mean, like in every domain that you can imagine, science and technology, medicine, transportation, space travel, AI, like any domain that you can imagine that touches IT in any way at all is going to get very, very good, very, very fast. And I think this is a little bit scary, but also, really, really interesting.
Is there a certain area that you're most interested in? Because I know you are interested in this a lot. I mean, what is like really interesting for you?
It's hard to say. I mean, like every day I'll, watch the various talking heads that follow this very, very closely, and the CEOs of the frontier labs in the US, and every day, or almost every day, there's some new amazing thing that comes out that blows me away. And this is the definition of fast takeoff, right? Where you really can't keep up with the news anymore. But I mean, one thing to impress upon your listeners maybe is is the concept of longevity escape velocity. So I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, but
Please.
Yeah. So essentially, what this is, you know, if you're a relatively healthy adult now, you know, there's a very high likelihood that you'll get to what we call longevity escape velocity, and that is the year at which, for every year of life that you age, the medical breakthroughs and the scientific breakthroughs are so fast that you gain an extra year of life from those breakthroughs. And we're really not that far away from this. I mean, I was listening to an interview with Ray Kurzweil recently and a few others. And some of the estimates for this is like, you know, if you can survive the next 10 years in a relatively healthy state, you're very likely to live to, you know, 150, 200 or even longer, because as it seems crazy, right? But if you think about it, the way that we're getting through some of this medical breakthroughs recently, like Google's DeepMind, I think, solved the protein folding problem a few years ago, which was an incredible breakthrough. And every year there'll be more and more of these kind of checkboxes of things that we need to solve. So like there was some discussion a few years ago about telomeres, which are a way that basically like cells track the rate of aging within the body. And there's, you know, some teams doing work to eliminate the cap on those so that people can live longer. And there's some suggestion that there's a clock or system within the body that can reduce or even eliminate aging. And these are all kind of solvable problems. Now, you could argue ethically whether they should be solved or not, but I think they're going to be biologically possible to be solved within the next 10 years. And if you can survive for that period of time, then, you know, the next 10 years will solve more problems, and the decade after more and more and more. And you'll end up with, you know, potentially a very long lifespan. So stay healthy, folks.
Man, that is crazy. Every time I talk with you, I always learn so much. And I think that's really interesting. I'd imagine there's a lot of billionaires that want to live forever and keep making more money, right?
That's it. Yeah. So I guess this is, you know, part of the issue here, which is what we don't really want longevity escape velocity for, you know, a chosen few or an elite of people. What we really want is to empower the average person to make the best of the life that they've got, give them the longest lifespan so they can spend as much time with their children and their family and do work that they really find meaningful and is constructive for society. And that's really what we mean when we talk about longevity escape velocity. I personally have no interest at all if you know, the top 0.01% of society gets to live for 500 years. That doesn't make me excited at all. Yeah. But the idea that you know, you might have somebody that has a real drive to solve a problem in the world, and they get to spend, you know, longer time with their friends and family and work on things that are really going to move the needle for civilization forward. I think that's incredible. And that would be, you know, if nothing else comes out of the AI race, I think solving some of those problems would be really useful for society.
Man, how do I go to another topic after talking about something like this, man? It's very difficult.
Well, if you think about it, you'll have more time to talk about it because you've got a longer lifespan.
I'll have a 100-year YouTube channel. I'm gonna have like, hey man, that's some big growth. I think, you know, what I'm looking more forward to most is like growing up as a kid, there was things that doctors couldn't solve to help me. And so I'm looking forward to, you know, when people get sick or have issues in their body, that those things can be solved without having to go through 10 or 20 or 30 years of dealing with, you know, pain or things like that. So, man, all right. I do want to touch on a few more things here while I have you. Prediction markets. I mean, we just saw the Super Bowl. Vegas did $130 million. Why prediction markets did 1.33 billion, 10x Vegas. We are seeing, you know, I think there was some, you know, push towards going after some of these prediction markets. You know, do you have any thoughts or feelings on where we are with prediction markets? Are they going to be around? You know, are they going to be sued? Just like, you know, Ripple and some other companies were sued.
Look, I'm not going to rule anything out. I think there's a good likelihood that some of them will be sued. That's not necessarily a bad thing in some cases. I think prediction markets in general are here to stay, for sure. I think we'll see some of the larger online betting and gambling companies take positions within some of these emerging prediction markets. I wouldn't be surprised if, some of the larger online casinos, I don't know this for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of those, the founders of those and some of those teams themselves are acquiring or investing in some of the prediction markets at the moment. I'm not surprised at all that prediction markets did more volume than Vegas recently. They're easily accessible to everybody that has an internet connection. There's like no barrier to entry. There's no, proof of funds required. There's no, in some cases, there's no ID required. A note of caution, though. I'm not saying that the gambling industry wholesale is particularly healthy and useful, but I would say that prediction markets in particular can be gamed and manipulated in a way that, particularly the smaller ones, in a way that, the house couldn't necessarily do for legal reasons in somewhere like Vegas. So, and everybody likes to talk smack about the house and how things are manipulated in places like that, but I think, if you've got a very small illiquid prediction market, then it's easy for, larger players to push that in one direction or the other to create the impression of a particular set of odds and then take a counter position somewhere else. And also, I know for a fact that there's a lot of AI agents that are deployed into those marketplaces for various reasons. And so it's sometimes not always clear. Like, for example, when you have, I saw a post recently that there's a 4% odds of the return of Jesus Christ in the next 12 months, right? Which I think probably the odds of that are a little lower than 4%, to be kind. So what's causing that? And so there's probably some complex strategy or hedging strategy that's been employed, or somebody's trying to bait liquidity into that market. So I would always say, like, sometimes when things look too good to be true, there's some other reason. So I would look, especially if you're betting on something that's very, very liquid, that's very, very popular, like the Super Bowl or some other like large event where lots of people are going to be betting, then there's less chance of this. But if you bet it on a thin prediction market, maybe with $100,000 or something in the pool, then there's always going to be that risk of manipulation. And one thing that we've seen through these is, unfortunately, evidence of some insider activity as well.
Yeah.
Where you'll see, a wallet that's not often active on prediction markets, and they'll come in, they'll make a big bet, $100,000, $200,000 on an outlier, tail risk thing that people don't think is going to happen, and then lo and behold, that comes through. So this is like kind of the arena that you're operating in. It's decentralized finance. It's the Wild West, and it's also gambling, which is also out there on the risk curve.
Yeah,
I think they have a place. And I think they're not going anywhere long term. But you're right. Some of them will probably get sued in the near future.
All right. So we've talked a lot about Clarity. We talked about some tokenization. We've talked about Flare, XRP. We talked a little bit about, where we're heading in the markets and AI. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that is on, what you're looking at, or things that you're interested in? Hit me with something.
I think, to be honest, I'd probably just want to go back to the market structure stuff,
okay,
and around the legislation there. So I think, one thing just to hammer home, and granted, some people don't listen to the whole stream, so just to reiterate as well, there is a massive amount of institutions and a massive amount of capital that have been waiting around for this legislation to pass. Everybody's known for some time that because of the current administration in the US, the legislation was going to be a lot friendlier than it could have otherwise been in previous years, which is great. So some of these institutions will have already started allocating along those lines to kind of front run a little bit. But I think, the majority of that capital, and certainly on the client side, basically none of these institutions have been able to expose their clients to this industry, other than through the Bitcoin ETFs and stuff that passed a couple of years ago. So nothing on the DeFi side. But I think a lot of that innovation is coming over the next few months. It's been built already. And now we just need to, check the box from the regulators so that these large institutions can get involved. And the clip you played earlier, where the speaker was saying that the board was going from 0 to 500 miles an hour on crypto and DeFi, is very illustrative of that point. If you suddenly have a massive $1 trillion market that's just unlocked, it then becomes a scramble to see who can service that client need the best in the shortest period of time in a way that's the most compliant and most cognizant of the risks. So I think, perhaps you said it best earlier when you said that, a lot of retail seem to be missing the point on that. And I'm not saying that, all the altcoins are going to moon in the next 6 months. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the liquidity flows and the capital that's going to come into the market in the next year, as soon as this legislation passes, is probably going to be larger than what we've seen in other cycles. It's just going to be deployed very differently.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of these institutions bring their own products online, just in the same way that when the ETF passed, we had 5 or 6 different Bitcoin ETFs from the various banks and institutions like IBIT, for example, and others. We'll see similar things to that, where as soon as the market structure bill is passed and everybody's happy with the legislation, we'll get various different institutions spinning up their own platforms that are proprietary for their customers. And then a lot of that eventually will bleed into the other DeFi stuff that's already around and already has market clarity and regulatory clarity. And some of that is clarity that they've earned through enforcement action that they've managed to effectively fight off. And other stuff is, within this bill, it'll become quite apparent when we get the final version which types of activities around stable coins and other stuff falls into the trap of, yes, this is compliant, or no, it isn't. And then that'll probably cause a little reshuffle within the industry as well.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of value in kind of what you said. I think there's going to be institutions that are prepared, that have everything ready to go, like you said, and then there's going to be some institutions that are maybe a little bit behind, maybe the smaller mid-size credit unions or institutions that haven't really had a crypto plan. And I think that's where it can get really interesting for the Ripples, the Coinbases, the Upholds, the Circles of the world, right? Because they have all of this infrastructure ready to go, a full tech stack. And if you need the ability to offer your clients, or you need to be able to tokenize, or you need to be able to move money instantaneously, I think those are going to be the real winners in this story. And some of the assets, of course, that they use in their infrastructure, I think will shine through.
Yeah, I think there's incredible money to be made in the next 12 months in servicing that niche of, institutions that are slightly behind the curve, but want to provide that to their customers. And then if you have, white labelable asset management framework, and you have the regulatory clarity and you have the legal support to be able to provide that in a way that's structured and makes sense, to provide that to all of the smaller and mid-sized institutions that will want to join the bandwagon as well. I think that will be an incredible niche served, and it could be served by Ripple, or it could be served by others. That's all to play for, and we're going to see. But certainly an exciting time. It's very different from previous cycles, I'll say that. And you can just look at the price action to see that it's different in a lot of ways. But I think the larger, let's say, the tectonic plates of the industry have shifted in a way that over time will probably be good for the industry longer term. Yeah. Ultimately, as much as it's enjoyable and fun to see things like Pump Fun popping off and people making life-changing returns very quickly, that's interesting and it's kind of a novelty factor, but it's not healthy long term. And so, seeing larger institutions come into play. I mean, this is how people used to talk many years ago about how to onboard the next billion users into Web3. And truly, the way that it is going to happen is that the institution that your grandma is already using to save is going to have a compliant product that they're going to include in a basket of assets that she already holds. Right. This is like a global diversified index of equities, for example, that includes an ETF like IBIT, is how your grandma's going to own Bitcoin. She's never going to go and maybe she will, but she's probably not going to go and buy a Ledger wallet, right, from ledger.com and then write the seed phrase down and then stick it on the fridge. And, right, that's not what's going to happen. So I think, most people, they don't want to spend a bunch of time studying this. They don't want to investigate deeply. They don't want to interact with the technology directly because it's risky. So they want to access it through their trusted intermediaries that they're already interacting with. Yep. Now, you might have some listeners that kind of take issue with this and they want a decentralized future that's, very cypherpunk-esque. And to them, I would say, so long as the core of the industry itself remains aligned with those values, remains trustless, remains decentralized, remains aligned with the cypherpunk vision, then the industry as a whole will stay aligned. It's just that the rails from which people access it will change over time. But as long as the core protocols of the industry, as long as Vitalik and the ETH Foundation stays aligned to those values, so long as, you know, the Bitcoin core developers, because they stay aligned, this is how over the long term the industry gets to bend enough so that people can come on board in a very easy manner, but stay you know, kind of aligned to the true vision of like Satoshi and the founding fathers of the industry.
No, I think there's a lot of value in that. And you know, people are, you know, have these 20, 30-year relationships with their banks, right? And if they can custody their assets at the people that they already trust, that's going to be the winner at the end of the day. And if people want to see their $1.40 XRP go to $10 or $50 or $100 one day, you need this institutional development. And so where is that compromise in between what the industry is today and what it's going to look like a year from now or 2 years from now? I think that'll be very interesting to see unfold. But if people really want their assets to be worth a ton of money one day, you need this institutional capital to come in.
Yeah, I guess I'll just argue against what I just said, actually, because the one variable here that we've maybe not factored in is the AI side. And it's like, okay, so your grandma's not going to go and get a Ledger wallet and interact directly with the Bitcoin network, but your grandma could send a prompt to her AI agent that does that, right? And so this is where we get, like, you know, very, very interesting elements where when AI starts and you know, transacting wholesale for people on the core protocols themselves, you know, it becomes a very simple and easy to access system that still allows you to access the decentralized roots of the industry in a very, very basic way. So you speak to your agent, perhaps even on voice mode. You don't even have to type the prompt yourself. You just say, hey, can you move, you know, $500 of Bitcoin from this wallet to my friend's wallet? Perhaps the agent already knows your friend's name because you've sent that into the system, so it has his wallet saved, and it sends it, you know, very, very quickly, no issue. And we're not that far away from that type of stuff. I mean, actually, it could be done now, but it's not being done at scale. And so my main point with this is we've built a lot of things as human beings to abstract complexity away from the individual. And the trade-off for that is that we trade in many cases, the asset custody. We cede the asset custody to institutions in exchange for safety and kind of ease of use. Now, AI, in a way, could flip that on its head over the medium term, where users get the safety and security and usability that institutions provide, but they get to do it in a way that's you know, still decentralized and local to them by running a bot on their own system, for example. So, bottom line, I think that the institutions are here, they're coming, they're waiting for the clarity, and then they're going to pile in, and you know, in a very, very meaningful way over the next few months. But I think as things continue to develop with AI, if those systems get very powerful and are still easy to use, we might see a resurgence in self-custody as time goes on.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next few months, Jack. And I definitely want to bring you back as we get more information and as the industry starts to change and develop. I think this has been an incredible hour just to kind of go through these topics with you and get your you know, expertise and your feedback from all of this. Did you want to say or touch on anything else kind of before we ended here?
No, I'll just say thank you to everybody at home that's been listening to this. It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy our conversations, Sensei. So thank you for having me.
Jack Hartley, Lunar Digital Assets. Jack, it's always a pleasure, man. Thank you for your time and your expertise. And I will see you the next time we do this, man.
See you later. Thank you.
Aloha. All right. I just want to check in with the chat to see how everybody is doing. What is going on, guys? It's always nice to have Jack. Jack is, man, that guy just knows a lot about a lot of things. And it's always an honor just to spend time with him. But I did want to see, I saw you guys talking on the side. I didn't want to lose focus as we went through this interview. But I did want to say hello to everybody. We got Crypto Prince. What's up, dude? We got Peter O'Neill. Great to see you, Peter. Hey, I did want to touch base. At the very start of the stream, Paul Gaines did say that he lost his father, this morning, and I just want to give a heartfelt, I'm sorry to hear that, Paul. And if the community sees Paul in the chat or in any comments of any of my videos, please show him some love and support right now, as he needs it. And it's just really sorry to hear that he lost his battle that he was fighting. And we just need to be there to support each other as we go through this stuff. So if you guys see Paul anywhere, just send him some love. All right. I did want to touch on a few things here though, guys. Like I don't know if I'm going to come back in a few hours and do another live stream, just because I got another interview tomorrow that I'm trying to prepare for on taxes. And you all know how fun taxes are. But I did want to share one thing with you here, because I know we're all trying to figure out what's happening with regulation. And we are getting another meeting that already supposed to have happened. The White House will still host representatives from the banking and crypto industries this afternoon at 2:30 Eastern. So that's already happened. We'll have to see kind of what updates we get from that. But we had Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citi, PNC, US Bank represented, and also some of the trade groups, the bank policy, the ABA bankers, and the ICBA was there. You also had Summer Mersinger, you had the Blockchain Association, you had Coinbase, you had A16Z, Paul Greenwell from Coinbase, and then you also had Miles Jennings here from A16Z. And I think you also had somebody from Ripple there. Here, you had Stuart Alderati confirmed in the White House meeting today. So I will bring updates on the channel. I'm building a video right now that will probably go out tomorrow morning, a complete update on regulation and what we are seeing through that. And just to keep you guys updated, I did make some recent HBAR content that you guys really responded to. So maybe I'll continue to do that. I did want to play this other clip here. Crypto Banter seems to be putting out some interesting clips. And I didn't really want to bring this up when I was talking with Jack, but here's 30 seconds and let me know what you guys think about this.
We've kind of entered into a world where people just don't really care much about altcoins at all. So it's kind of, they're just kind of losing, people are losing interest in them. I think we might go into a period where literally no one cares about altcoins for, a year or two. And most of them just simply go to zero. I think that's a good thing, because I think it actually might lead to real development in the space, and not all this garbage pretend development that we, have pretended to have with meme coins and all this other stuff.
I don't really know how to feel about that. All coins going all to zero. I think that'll never happen. I think there's a large part of the industry that is probably money grabs. They don't have the runway to operate. They don't have the community to operate. And, they probably won't go anywhere. But if you're talking about the Solanas, the HBARs, the XRPs, the Stellars of the world, the Chainlinks of the world, if you think they're just going to just disappear overnight, I just don't agree with kind of that assessment. But I was just a little shocked from the Crypto Banter putting that out. I mean, some people only think that the development on Bitcoin is probably where this is all heading, but we know that institutions are going to need to use some of these other blockchains to move value in between permission systems. So I thought that was interesting. We also had this clip here from Senator McCormick on crypto regulation. I did want to play this since I have you guys here.
Crypto platforms should not be able to pay customers to take money out of their traditional banking account, their deposit account, and putting in the crypto platforms. That's a real allure, paying customers with rewards, and those companies don't have the same regulations that the banks face. So what's your take on that? What kind of regulations are you looking for the crypto platforms so that it is in fact a fair playing field?
Well, I think the question is all around yield and those rewards and how do you have the balance where you have rewards in the crypto space that aren't going to be disadvantageous to banking, and in particular how to ensure that banks can compete in a way that's that's going to be advantageous for them too. This is a whole new world, and we need to ensure there's great competition and great opportunity. For me, the issue is that if the banks are holding stable coins, there's a question of how the lending ratios are going to work and whether the communities can still have the amount of loans to small businesses. So that's a particular focus where if deposits are even in the community banks and stablecoin, that they won't have the same lending capacity. So there's a set of balancing considerations, and I think that's the debate that's going on right now. The White House is deeply involved, which I think is a good step.
It does sound like the stablecoin is, yield on stablecoins is still the most contentious spot here that people are talking about. We got Taurus here checking in. I don't think people are losing interest in altcoins. If he's talking about meme coins, pump fund, and meme tokens, that's because of oversaturation. Yeah, I don't know. You're probably right, but I'm not interested in any meme coins right now. I need to put as much money as I can towards the things that are really going to matter. Let's see. Eric's checking in here. Says the end of the Japanese carry trade will kill US dollar liquidity. It will happen when the Bank of Japan raises rates. Yeah, I think there's still people that believe the end of the carry trade was going to cause XRP to explode. That's still yet to be seen. So we'll have to see how all of that goes down. Let's see here. Big Kahuna says carry trade is going to be a slow process. US has agreed to prop up the yen already, so Japan will not set off a global event. Well, I guess that doesn't. Man, for the last year and a half, people have told me that just going to be the carry trade. This is going to cause XRP to explode. And I kept saying one doesn't have anything to do with the other. And people kept telling me, Sensei, you're wrong. And this person's right. Okay. All right. Well, we're here and I haven't seen anything yet. So I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just getting a little strange here. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, man. I'm just getting a little frustrated with someone texts me almost on a daily basis, maybe not a daily basis, but telling me how the carry trade is going to make him rich. And I keep telling him, man, you're putting a little too much faith into this. And I guess we'll see. Anybody else have anything before we, I didn't want to spend too much time here. I know we're going to, he gets people brainwashed. I feel that, man. And I see those people a lot, just walking around like zombies at this point. Your dad. Yeah. Chipper, we got there, Chipper. All right, let's do this. I am going to listen. Tomorrow we have a conversation about taxes. I know taxes are something that people ask about all the time. And I brought in some tax experts to answer some of your questions. So if you have a tax question tomorrow, bring it. So we are going to be kicking off here at, let me see here. What time is this interview? This interview is going to be at 1 p.m. my time. That's 5 p.m. Eastern time. That is what we are going to jump into tomorrow. And then on Friday, we're going to go to a normal chat. I will have a lot of news, a lot of updates. I'm going to go through it as quickly and efficiently as I can. And I appreciate you, Big Kahuna. Jack is great. Jack is just anytime Jack starts talking about AI and other topics, I mean, there's just so much value that he adds, just a different level of understanding on a lot of these topics. And that's why I bring him in. He's not the most well-known person, right? Doesn't have 1 million followers, but his connections to the industry and the things that he knows far exceed some of these other people I see on some of these other shows. So I'm always glad to have Jack with us. 6 p.m. Eastern time. Did the time? Yeah. Oh, yes, you're right. I apologize. I don't know why I was thinking 4 hours. You're right. 6 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you for that. Dan, are we having to flag Taurus? Taurus is getting the ban here. Dadhood Aeronautics. Hey man, I never caught you live. I watch your videos on the daily. Thank you for your content. You rock. Hey, thank you so much, Dad. I really appreciate you. Sorry to catch this right as I'm kind of heading out the door. I do need to record 2 more videos today to keep up with my daily content that I want to make, so to keep everybody updated on this channel. But thank you for your support. It does mean the world, means the world to the seal, me and Luna, of course. And so I really appreciate you guys. Whales are holding at this stage. Retail is running. Yeah, this is the part where people are making the wrong decision probably. You know, we have never been this close to institutional adoption of digital assets. Never been this close. And the amount of information that I take in daily is telling me that we're right there, that banks are now adopting the technology at breakneck speeds. And if you listen to the last hour in interview, Jack goes into this in detail. And it feels like we just need to get through, you know, a few more months, you know, another 3 months, another 6 months, another 8 or 10 months. Like, I don't know how long it's going to be, but we've never been this close. And to take your eye off the ball now, you know, if you've been in this industry for years and you're just giving up now, it's very sad, man. It's very sad. Very sad. Ripple merch with Brad's signature at Community Day. Isn't Community Day online? I don't have an update on the White House meeting. It was kind of, there wasn't enough. Let me see if there's anything online about it. Hold on. Let me see here. I know they met. I haven't seen anything about the actual meeting yet. So, let me see. Oh yeah, there he is. That's so cool, man. Yeah, I'm going to be covering Community Day here. Let's see. Oh, you know who'd have, Eleanor Tarrant would have updates. Let me see. 1 hour ago, Wall Street investment bank Goldman Sachs just revealed it holds 1.1 billion Bitcoin ETH and 153 million in XRP. That's interesting. I need to put that into a video. No, we don't have updates yet, guys. Let me put an update video together. Let me go spend some time to better understand what's happening. Tomorrow morning, when you get up, look out for a video. Actually, probably not when you get up, right? Probably about 5 a.m. my time, the first video will come out, and that'll be the regulation update video. So, you know, we have about 4 videos coming out today that are already pre-built. I built 2 this morning. We had 2 from yesterday. And then I usually build 2 in the afternoon, which will be an update on regulation and what's going on. All right. All right, guys, I need to go eat some lunch and just decompress a bit here. I've been going at physical therapy and then right back to back interview. And now I need to prepare for the interview tomorrow and create 2 more videos. So I love you guys. I will see you tomorrow for the tax interview. And then I'll see you on Friday for a regular chat where I will just be hammering information. All right. Aloha. Thanks, guys. Bye.